In this feature, I'm going to show you how to get to here, which is a map of connections of a family I've researched using simply the Hendersons directories for 1908, 1909, and 1910. So this is Peel's Prairie Provinces, and what I'm going to show you is how I've been using the directories feature. Now, the directories are a free resource, and they're pretty fantastic if you can work your way around them, but it's taken me a couple of years of working with them to really be able to ferret out the goods and then to use them in Evernote. So jumping right into it, this is the University of Alberta's webpage, and under Featured Collections is where you will find the directories. That's right here in the top right corner. And then this right here, Henderson's directories. So there are directories for the major centers in the Prairie Provinces. Not all the directories are here, unfortunately, but a significant number of them are here, and enough to really give you a sense of your ancestor and their family members, and actually a lot more stuff than perhaps you may know. I certainly didn't know, and that's what we're going to get into. So for our example, I'm going to use Edmonton, and here are the Edmonton city directories. I could use any directory, but I'm going to use Edmonton. One of the things about the Edmonton directories is that there are a great deal of them available. So as you can see as I scroll, we've got the 10s, the 20s, the 30s, right on up to, it looks like they've got everything. I'm not seeing a break in the 40s either, from right up to 57, and then a few missing, and then there's one in 1963. But otherwise, it's a pretty comprehensive list. And similarly, if we were to go to, say, Saskatoon, Saskatoons are organized in a slightly different way. Instead of having them all listed like Edmonton's so neatly was, they have them listed in 3177.1, .2, .3, .4, .5, and .6. And not to worry, though, .1 has Henderson's directory for 1908 and 1909. .2 has 1910 through 1919, and so on and so forth. So yes, a lot of great things to see, but as I said, we're going to hop on to Edmonton here. Now, I'm going to start at 1908 and take you through 1909 and 1910. Of course, if I were doing this for a client, or if I was doing it even for my own family, I would go through every single directory looking for family members. Now, the first, I have to say, 10 times I used the directory, I just was so eager to get to the name that I clicked on the page, and there it is. I completely missed the other ways to get around the directory, and then to get through, just kept hitting the next button. I'll make the images smaller so you can see what's going on here, and that's basically how I navigated through that, which you can do. There's nothing wrong with it. It's I find it a little bit slow. There are other ways of navigating through the Henderson directories, so let me show you both of them. If we click back to the 1908 index here, and we scroll down, you can see below the page, you can jump to any number of pages. So in this particular directory, even though it was a 1908 directory, there are 330 some pages. And if you know approximately how a directory is set out, then you can click and guess and go to the exact page. So that's great. And that's something you might be able to do once you're finished with this webinar, or show, I should say, since I don't actually have anyone talking to me. So it's not really a webinar. But it's this. I really just discovered this a little while ago, the Flipbook view, and it's fantastic. So let me introduce you to the Flipbook. What it's saying is that Flipbook isn't for every browser. I hope you, as a genealogist, have more than one browser because this is a common issue. I personally run Chrome and Safari, but if I needed, I would definitely run Firefox and Internet Explorer as well, because there's no need to cut yourself off if the browser is the issue. So here's the first directory, and it's a little bit different from the 1909 directory, but the first part is to navigate through it, you click the page like a reader. If you have an e-reader or a Kindle, it's the same, just clicking on the pages. And the first part of every directory is a contents page, an index. Let's just have a look at the contents page. This is what's in the directory. And the alphabetical directory are what you're looking for. That's the directory of names. And then there's all kinds of useful information in a directory. If, for example, you had a school teacher and you knew the school, that would be useful. If you knew it was a particularly large business, there's an index for advertisers. Now, what is quite interesting about the 1908 directory is that there is no street directory. That comes in 1909. And so in this directory, we are only going to look for the alphabetical names. So alphabetical directory is page 57. And because it's our first time looking at a directory, I'm going to click through so that you can see what else is in the beginning of a directory. So if there's ever a question when you're looking at a census form, or you don't know what schools or prisons or hospitals are in a town, a directory will tell you, as well as giving all kinds of blistering detail about, for example, who worked at the Dominion Lands Office. Here's the warden at the Alberta Penitentiary. Okay, so page 57 is the beginning of the alphabetical directory. And for this demonstration, I'm going to choose the Abbott family because they are on the first page of the alphabetical listings and easy to find. Now, let's see here. Okay. So here we have the Abbotts. Now, I don't know anything about the Abbotts. For this example, I'm going to follow the lives of the Abbotts and see what I can find out about them. So we've got here, the very first listing is Clarence E. Abbott of Abbott and Smart, H. 526, Namayo. Now, right away, if Clarence Abbott was our person of interest, that's a lot of information. It gives his full name, his address, the letter H means householder, and Abbott and Smart is the name of his company. But if Clarence Abbott was actually the person I was looking for, I wouldn't stop there. I would keep reading. Right below Clarence Abbott is Percy W. Abbott. Now, Percy is a law student. Looks like he works for Boyle and Parley, which is a law firm in Edmonton. And RMS, I would say that he rooms at 526 Namayo. Now, that means that he appears to room with Clarence Abbott. And I would think two people named Abbott living in Edmonton at the same address are probably related to each other. So I think they're probably family. Even better than that, for our purposes, Abbott and Smart is right here. So there's the company. So we know Clarence, probably his brother, Percy, and now we've got his business, Abbott and Smart, and his business partner, A.S. Smart. We know what they do, flour and feed dealers. We know the address of the company, 408 Namayo. We know, for example, that 408 Namayo is probably just down the street from 526 Namayo. So you can imagine already that Clarence just walks down the street to go to work, to join his partner at the flour and feed dealership. What else have we got here? We've got Thomas Abbott, a farmer. He has a house at 917 Kinistino. And then it's Abbs and Abraham and Acme. Okay, so let's see what we can see about what we know. We know that the partner is A.S. Smart. We know Clarence. We know he works at Abbott and Smart. And let's have a look at Boyle and Parley as well. Before we do that, though, I did say that this is a talk about directories and Evernote. And so I'm going to show you how I do that. First things first, I'm going to collect this image for Evernote. And I do that by right-clicking on the mouse. And I get this pop-up, which says a number of different options. I can save it to downloads if I want, and I can save the image to Evernote. Now, I prefer to save the image to Evernote as opposed to downloads, because if I do that, save it directly to Evernote, it will capture the link, and that will save me one more cut and paste. The other thing I like to do is I like to make the text as large as possible. And then I take a snip and I add that to my note. So I'm going to do that right now. Now, if you're a PC user, Windows has what's called a snipping tool, and it is my best friend. If you don't see a snipping tool on your computer or use it, you can Google snipping, SNIPPING tool, and honestly, for Mac though, it's Shift Command 4. That's what I use. That gives me the beginning of a snip, and I'm going to take all of the Abbotts and snip. Now I'll skip over to my Evernote. So this is an Evernote web browser window. When I have demonstrated Evernote in the past, I have used my application, which I have downloaded to my computer, and apparently it looks quite different from what you might be used to looking at. So this is the web version, which should be very similar to what you see. And thank you so much for that comment. So here is our image downloaded from the internet. It syncs up pretty quickly. And what I like is over here under the note information, the URL is automatically captured. So that saves me a lot of later digging. If I need to go back, if I need to find this link again. also the date I created it, where it came from. It allows me, for example, to write notes in it, and I'm going to do that right now. And I'm also going to add in this note the larger version of the text. There. So now my note looks like this. It's got the entire image, and it's got the screen snip of the abbots that I'm looking for. Now we're going to move on to looking for Boyle and Parley. I'm going to use the search function up here under Go. It's pretty good. Let's see what we can find if we type in Boyle. Okay, so unfortunately there are a lot of Boyles, so that doesn't really help. In this case, though, we have a different name that we can search, Parley, and so I will do that. Okay, so we only have this many search results. I think I can deal with that. Okay, there it is. That's very nice. That was quick. So under B, on page 70 of the Henderson's Edmonton directory, we have found Boyle and Parley, which, if you recall from earlier, is Percy's place of employment. He's a law student at Boyle and Parley. Boyle and Parley is right here. Notice it has the names of both partners, J.R. Boyle and H.A. Parley, and it has John R. Boyle. So, in other words, what we have are Clarence's brother Percy, Percy's bosses Boyle and Parley, and while I'm here, if I was looking for friends, acquaintances, and neighbors, I'm just going to quickly check to see if John R. Boyle has any other family members in Edmonton. We've got Alfred W. Boyle, Anna Boyle, Ethel Boyle, Eva, James. They might be members of the Boyle family, but we can't tell if they are right now because none of them actually live at 376 9th. However, we can and will capture the image. Now we're going to go on and see what else we can find with Clarence. Now Clarence has a partner, A.S. Smart. So let's type in Smart. This is page 70 already, so possibly 193. Okay. So under S, we've got Smart Alexander of Abbott and Smart. So right away, we know that that is the partner of Clarence Abbott. We've got Edwin Smart, a bootmaker. We've got Harry, the cash boy. And we've got T.A. Smart. And when I'm looking at these addresses, Alex lives at 544 15th. Edwin lives at 356 4th. Harry lives at 356 4th. And T.A. Smart, the clerk, lives at 544 15th. So right away, I know that of the 4 Smart names, we have at least 2 families because Edwin Smart and Harry Smart lived together at 356 4th, and Alex Smart and T.A. Smart lived together at 544 15th. Let's grab that image as well. So as you can see, we can go on like this, and we can chase down Parley, for example, who's the partner of Boyle, and the rest of it to get a full picture of friends, acquaintances, and neighbors in the 1908 Henderson Directory. But I'm going to move on now to looking for 1909, so that I can show you the progression between 1908 and 1909. Plus, 1909 has some other interesting features. So here we have the 1909 city directory for Edmonton. Like the 1908 directory, we've got the preface. And in the content section, I would like to draw your attention to a difference. We have the alphabetical directory of names on 127, which is great, and we can hop to the Abbotts pretty quickly. But we've also got a street directory. Now, in my mind, this gives a potential 2 places for every listing of your ancestor that has a place where they worked. In other words, you can look up the address where your ancestor lived, but also the address where they worked. And in this way, you get a greater idea of what it is they did for a living, and a fuller picture, I think, of who your ancestor was and what they did. Let's go to this alphabetical directory first. That's page 127. Okay, we're on page 127 of the alphabetical directory. Let's make it nice and large so we can see it. And in 1909, we can see there's a few more Abbotts. So we've got Clarence, who we met in 1908, of Abbott and Smart, living now at 391 Fraser Avenue. We've got a couple of John Abbotts, a teamster living in a house at 413 Clark, and another John Jr. Abbott, another teamster, living at 413 Clark. My guess is these two are related. We've got a J. Abbott, boilermaker, working for the CNR and living near the Roundhouse. That's fantastic. We've got Percy Abbott, who we met in 1908, still a student at Boyle and Parley. Sadie Abbott at 917 Kinestino, and the company, Abbott and Smart. Now they're feed dealers on Namayo. They're also grocers at 266 Elizabeth Street. And we have Thomas Abbott of Abbott and Smart at 917 Kinestino. Now, we knew about Clarence, and we had met Percy, but who is Thomas Abbott of 917 Kinestino? Let's go back and have a look. In 1908, it looks like Thomas Abbott was a farmer at 917 Kinestino. In 1909, Thomas Abbott has joined Abbott and Smart. And that's one of the things I think is absolutely fantastic about directories. You can see how people's lives change from year to year. And in this case, I think we've got a link between Thomas, Clarence, and Percy. But if you keep looking, Sadie Abbott lives at 917 Kinestino as well. I think Sadie, Thomas, Percy, and Clarence are all related. They're all the same family. Let's grab this page and move on. Okay, now that we have them, we noticed in the 1909 directory that there's a street directory. That means that we can find the Abbotts maybe by looking at their streets. But there's a quicker way of doing that. We could look through the street directory, but we could also look for search items. So let's try that. There's not too many Abbotts. I think we've got time to have a look at them. There's John, our teamster. We don't know if he's related, but we're going to grab this information anyway. Here's Abbott and Smart, located at 266 Elizabeth Street. So what's great about this is that we can see Abbott and Smart's neighbors. I sound like Mr. Rogers here, but it's pretty cool to be able to see the different businesses and who is neighboring who. Just grabbing that page. This looks like a listing of the street address for Kinestino. And who lives on Kinestino? Thomas Abbott and Sadie Abbott. Doesn't look like Sadie is listed here, but we've got 917 Kinestino. And We've also got the neighbors. While this is copying, I'll talk a little bit about why neighbors are important. Neighbors could be just neighbors, or they could be great friends. In some cases, I have found neighbors as witnesses for marriages or baptisms. A person's neighbor could have played a really large role in your ancestor's life, and you don't know it until you see information like this. And that's why Evernote is so great in being able to capture information that you're not sure about, but you need to record because its future impact isn't known to you yet. Yep, here we are. This is Percy. Living at 16th Street. Percy lives at 532, and his neighbors are Manuel and Cairns. I'm going to quickly go through the rest of these listings, catch them all, and then we're going to move into the 1910 directory. Look at this. We didn't know this before we started, but by searching for Abbott, we found Ernest Benford, who is a driver at Abbott and Smart. So from just 2 directories, we already know Clarence, we know his address, we know his family, his brothers, his company, and now we know his staff. Oh, and while I'm here, I should point out, we know Ernest's partner, Edith Benford, just above him, who is a clerk at J.H. Morris and Company. We know this because they both have the same address. And actually, since we're looking, Charles and Chester live at 140 Morris as well. That's what I mean about directories. Same thing here. Isn't this great? We've got Charles Honeyborn, the bookkeeper at Abbott and Smart. So now we have 2 of Clarence's staff. Same thing here again. This is Gordon Smart, a clerk at Abbott and Smart. And we know it's Abbott and Smart. And this is Gordon Smart. What's to say that he isn't related to the other founding partner, Smart? A.S. Smart, in fact. In fact, who is A.S. Smart? Looks like he's right here. Alexander S. Smart of Abbott and Smart, living at 544 5th. Gordon Smart, in fact, lives with him. And while I was here looking at the smarts, I thought I'd check out the second page. And Thomas Smart, of a different company, Smart and Cannell, lives at 544 15th as well. So I would say that's another member of the family living in the same house but working in a different company. These people are really enterprising. This is great. Have you noticed that Abbott and Smart, we know, are the grocers, and they are on 266 Elizabeth, but it looks like they have competition. The Aiken brothers at 402 Namayo. Remember Namayo? Well, Evernote does. If we look back on some of the things that we have captured, we can see that 408 Namayo is where Abbott and Smart is located. So it's just down the street from the Aiken brothers. So who's this? In 1909, White Avenue, located in Strathcona, was not a part of Edmonton. And so William Abbott here, of the boot and shoemaker, is quite possibly not an Abbott or related to the Abbotts that we know. But, I mean, we can't rule that out right now. I'm going to grab that. Just because I can. Okay, now that we've got all that, have a look at what else we've got here. We've got so many other snips. But I'm not quite done. Let's go to the 1910 Henderson's Directory. And I will complete my search of looking through Henderson's Directory for 1908, 1909, and 1910. Okay, so now we're sitting here at 1910. Once again, we've got the same directory, same layout. Edmonton is growing. And I'm going to hop straight on over to the search engine. Not too many results, same as before, so I'm just going to click through them. We've got John Abbott, the Teamster. And you know what I just realized? John Abbott, the Teamster, who we don't know if he's family or not. But you know what's really interesting is that he lives quite close to people we do know are family. Because he lives near Namayo and Kinestino, which is where Thomas Abbott lives. So John Abbott living close to his two family members on Namayo and Kinestino, and an Abbott, he could be family. This is interesting. In 1910, Abbott and Smart now have a storage facility. Clarence E. Abbott is living at 391 Fraser. And Percy Abbott is still living on 532 16th. Except now, if you'll notice, Percy is no longer a student. Percy has taken his bar exam, has clearly passed because he is now a barrister. We have a James Abbott, laborer, living at 1135 3rd Street. Haven't met him before, but as I said before, we can't rule anybody out. Oh, this is great. Finally, some abbreviations. If you're not familiar with directory abbreviations, this is a really good page to keep. This one, for example, bookbinder. We've got some old occupations that perhaps aren't around anymore, like telegraph. I would have thought telephone, so telegraph, that's good to know. Phone is telephone. Oh, LVS means lives. Let's grab this page too. (1910), we've got Boyle and Parley, John R. Boyle, Harold Parley, Churchill Freeman, and Percy Abbott. Well, it looks like Percy might be a partner. They are listed as barristers and they are working at 155 Jasper. Charles Honeyborn is still working as a clerk at Abbott and Smart. And Alex Smart is still at 544 15th Street with his family. Gordon Smart is also still working at 544. When we go over to Evernote, all of our notes are captured. And it's at this point that I tend to make my notes. I decide, this for example is 1910. I might give them a tag. So I've had a chance to review the information and the captures into Evernote, and I thought you might find it instructive for me to share this map of connections for Clarence Abbott. As we can see, Clarence in the middle was the person that we were looking into, a grocer at Abbott and Smart. His relative, Percy, who might have been his brother, but now I'm thinking about it, might be his son or some other relation. But Percy's connection to Boyle and Parley, where he worked. And through Boyle and Parley, we could find his partners, John Boyle, H.A. Parley, Churchill Freeman, and William Mustard. Also, looking over to Abbott and Smart, we found Thomas Abbott and Sadie Abbott living at 917 Canistino, as well as Evelyn Abbott in 1910. Plus, through Abbott and Smart, Clarence Abbott's partner Alex Smart, we have Alex's family, Ernest, Gordon, James, Thomas, as well as Abbott and Smart's employees, Charles Honeyborn and Ernest Benford, plus his family. I hope that this has been instructive, where we have gone through the Henderson's directories on Peel's Prairie Provinces, going to the featured collections, going to Henderson's directories, and then following the lives of a group of people living in Edmonton and finding out as much as we can about their lives simply by looking up who they are, where they lived, and everyone related to them, and collecting all of that information in Evernote. This is Past Presence, Linda Yip signing off. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and if you have any comments or any suggestions, then please leave me a comment in below. Till next time.